After my mother remarried, I gained an unpredictable stepsister. At school, she asked me to stay away from her. When my classmates bullied me, she only watched coldly. I thought she hated me immensely until that day when I got a girlfriend. At midnight, she suddenly opened the door to my room with an ambiguous smile and asked, "Brother, do you already have a girlfriend?" But in the next second, she grabbed me by the neck tightly and, with a voice full of resentment, said, "Alan, haven't you played with me enough yet?" After my mother's divorce, she took me with her to marry a gentleman. That gentleman had a daughter named Zixuan. She was a year younger than me. My mother said Zixuan was very intelligent and obedient. The day I moved into the new house, she greeted me politely with a "brother" and even smiled while helping us unpack. My mother also smiled. It was a warm scene, as if we were a happy family full of love. But as soon as our parents left, everything changed. When, out of curiosity, I tried to touch a trophy in the display case, Zixuan pushed me and said coldly, "Don't touch my things!" Her face suddenly turned icy, completely different from the smile from before. At that moment, I understood one thing. She didn't like me. Or perhaps she deeply hated me. Later, I started studying at the same school and even in the same class. In front of our parents, she would smile and say she would take care of me, but at school, she treated me like a stranger. She was a prominent figure in the school, very popular among the boys. For them, Zixuan was beautiful, intelligent, kind, and sweet. A perfect goddess. But only I knew what she was really like. One day after class, I realized I had forgotten my keys. Since Zixuan had club activities, I went to look for her at the club room. I arrived just as a younger boy was confessing to her. Amidst the cheers, she rejected him kindly and sweetly returned the love letter. Then she saw me with that same smile that hadn't faded yet. She walked slowly toward me. I instinctively took a step back. In a corner out of sight of the others, she took off her mask of kindness and, with an icy voice, said, "What do you want?" "I forgot my keys." She pulled something out of her pocket. I reached out my hand to take it, but she let go just before I could touch it. With a clang, the keys fell to the floor. Acting as if nothing had happened, she turned around and returned to class. As I leaned down to pick them up, I heard someone ask her, "Another one confessed his love? Did you say yes?" She let out a giggle. "I don't like him." That night, for the first time, Zixuan knocked on my room door at midnight. Under the moonlight, she stood in front of the door. Her beautiful face was as cold as frost, her voice even more icy. "From now on, stay away from me." After remarrying, my mother seemed very happy, so when Mr. Liu asked me if Zixuan was making my life difficult, I only smiled and shook my head. In that moment, I saw a flash of contempt in Zixuan's eyes. I endured it. As long as my mother was happy, it didn't matter what happened to me. But since it was misinterpreted that I confessed to Zixuan, my school life got much worse. I never imagined I would have so many rivals who would hate me so much. Strange objects often appeared on my desk. Rumors about me being a thief spread everywhere all the time. Zixuan only watched coldly. I even started to suspect if she wasn't the one behind it all. But I kept enduring until one day I discovered that someone had scribbled "shameless" all over my notebook. After class, I stayed behind erasing it in silence. I don't know since when Zixuan had been by my side. The classroom was empty, illuminated only by the last rays of sunset. She smiled with disdain, her voice loaded with mockery. "Totally deserved, just like your mother." A slap broke the silence of the dusk. Her cheek reddened instantly. My hand still raised, I looked at her with rage. "I put up with you for my mother, Zixuan. Don't overdo it." The surprise in her eyes lasted only an instant. Then, as if she had discovered something interesting, a dark smile slowly formed on her lips. She approached little by little. I tried to back away by instinct, but didn't succeed. She stopped near my ear and murmured with a demonic voice, "You're finished." It didn't take me long to understand the meaning of those words. At school, Zixuan changed her attitude. She started approaching me publicly. She would enter the classroom with me, and upon leaving, she waited for me at the door. I couldn't avoid her. Then, an even more cruel revenge began. My books were full of glue, my chair soaked in ink. When the bell rang, I was the only one still standing in the middle of the classroom. Zixuan would pass by my side with that sweet smile and whisper to me, "Fun?" I grit my teeth, looking at her. Everyone thought I would keep enduring, until one day I caught the one who had been ruining my desk. It was the same boy who had confessed to Zixuan, a student from another class. He entered mine without permission to cause trouble, and nobody stopped him. With a marker, he started scratching my table. I grabbed him by the shirt collar and dragged him out. Screams filled my ears. He resisted, but I held him with more strength. I cornered him against the railing of the 5th floor. Half of his body was hanging off. The freezing wind blew hard. His face turned pale, crying, "I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Please let me go, I'm afraid of heights." The screams attracted the attention of the whole floor, and I still didn't let go until the professor, accompanied by other teachers, pulled me away from him. As I left, I saw Zixuan among the crowd. She frowned with an expression so complex that I couldn't decipher it. Passing by her, I lowered my head and let out a laugh full of contempt. From that day on, I earned a new nickname, the Madman. Nobody dared to bother me anymore. Even Zixuan started behaving in a strangely different way with me. In math class, the teacher asked us to organize into groups to discuss. After the incident with the Madman, nobody wanted to be in my group. Everyone grouped into trios or quintets, and I was left alone with my head down, reading a book. "Do you want to join my group?" A soft voice interrupted me. I looked up. It was Xiao, the class representative. I didn't know why she was noticing me, but I nodded slightly. After class, Xiao asked me naturally, "Do you want to go home with me?" I didn't refuse. Okay. But just as I reached the school gate, someone suddenly called me, "Zixuan?" I frowned upon seeing her approach slowly. She stopped right in front of me, with that so familiar smile. "Weren't you planning to wait for me?" Xiao looked at us surprised. It seemed that Zixuan only just noticed her presence. Then I interrupted coldly. "We're only neighbors." Xiao stayed silent for a moment, scratching her head. "Then go back together, I'll go ahead." After she left, Zixuan let out a dry laugh. "Neighbors, eh?" I didn't respond. I turned and left. Since that day, Zixuan's behavior became even stranger. Every time Xiao spoke to me, not even a few minutes would pass before Zixuan appeared. That way of pursuing me like a shadow disgusted me even more than the school bullying. To free myself from her, I intentionally approached Xiao. Little by little, we became true friends. Xiao was kind and sweet. She always thought of others first. She was the complete opposite of Zixuan, a dark demon incapable of reaching the light. Sunday was Xiao's birthday. She invited me to celebrate it. It coincided with my parents and Zixuan not being at home. I carefully chose my clothes, groomed myself with care, and just when I was preparing to leave, click, the door burst open. Zixuan had returned. Under the white and cold light of the living room, she stared at me. "Where are you going?" I responded with indifference, "It's none of your business." As I passed by her, she suddenly grabbed my wrist hard. "Let go of me," I frowned. She grit her teeth. "I asked you, where are you going?" I pulled away abruptly. "It's not your problem." Bang! Zixuan pushed me hard against the wall. My back hit the switch. Click! The light went out. The room was wrapped in darkness. In the middle of the gloom, I raised my hand, but she grabbed my other one. Zixuan let out a low laugh. Her voice sounded like the breath of a demon. "Are you going to hit me again?" Her warm breath brushed my ear. Her cold fingers slowly traveled across my cheek. "Brother, if you dare to raise your hand to me, I'll make you pay for it." Although I couldn't see her, I perfectly imagined the satisfied smile on her face. "Ah, yes?" I also smiled. I tilted my head and bit the hand that wouldn't stop touching me with force. Zixuan inhaled with pain and pushed me. I could taste the flavor of blood. Click! The light turned back on. Under the white and cold glow, her ears were completely red. In her eyes, a flash of resentment shone, but she hid it quickly. Zixuan wiped the blood from her palm, brought it to her lips, and touched it softly. The corner of her red mouth curved with mockery. "Why didn't you bite here?" I didn't pay attention to her. I simply turned around and headed toward the door. This time Zixuan didn't stop me, but she walked right behind me. The street at sunset was desolate and cold. Under the dim yellow light of the street lamps, she was like my shadow, neither far nor near, impossible to shake. Turning a corner, I suddenly began to run. The freezing wind hissed in my ears. This time, she didn't follow me. The birthday party was held in a karaoke. In front of the private room door, I took off my thick coat, revealing the light black shirt I wore underneath. I took a breath and pushed the door to enter. Apparently, Xiao hadn't told anyone that I was coming. The instant I entered, the entire room went silent. Even the one who was singing with the microphone froze, forgetting to continue. In the gloom of the place, only the background music broke the silence. Xiao was the first to speak. "Alan!" She gave me a radiant smile, her eyes shining. "I didn't think you'd actually come." I nodded slightly. "Don't just stand there." She took me by the hand and led me to sit down. Then she turned to the others and said, "Come on, keep singing." The music sounded again. The atmosphere of the room gradually returned to normal. On the table there were many bottles of alcohol. It seems they had already drunk quite a bit before I arrived. The aroma of the liquor, mixed with the soft perfume of Xiao, created a strange sensation that made my cheeks burn. I said in a low voice, "Happy birthday." "Thanks." She narrowed her eyes and smiled with joy. I pulled a small box from my pocket. "A gift." She seemed surprised. "Can I open it?" I nodded. She opened the box carefully, her eyes lit up. It was a small and delicate necklace. Since the first time I saw it, I knew it would look perfect on Xiao. "Thanks, I love it." Some people looked at us with certain curiosity, but Xiao placed herself naturally in front of me, protecting me, making me feel for the first time in years that I belonged to a group, as if I had never been excluded. After 2 songs, a group of boys approached laughing. "President, more guests arrived, let's go welcome them." Xiao nodded. Just in that moment, an intense sensation of uneasiness invaded me until Zixuan appeared. Seeing her face, I almost held my breath. She had a band-aid on her hand, and as soon as she entered, she was surrounded by several boys. She was smiling sweetly and said something that made them laugh. Then she walked slowly toward me and stopped right in front. "Is this seat taken?" She pointed to the empty space beside me. Nobody responded for me. Zixuan sat down with indifference. I straightened up and tried to distance myself from her as much as possible within the reduced space. Xiao, without noticing the tension between us, asked with curiosity, "Is it true? You guys are neighbors? Why didn't you come together?" I responded coldly, "We're not close." In that instant, I felt my wrist being squeezed hard. Zixuan's hand was holding me with aggression. It hurt. "Ah, yes?" Xiao sighed, relieved. "I thought you were childhood friends." "We are not," I answered without emotion. That hand squeezed again with more force. Just at that moment, someone called Xiao. She got up to receive the guests. Zixuan leaned close to me. "Brother?" The lights were dim, the music loud. It seemed nobody paid attention to this corner. She looked at me with those eyes in which the malice she always hid was revealed. "You look very handsome today, too." Clearly, it was a compliment, but it didn't have a shred of warmth. "Let go," I said coldly, containing my anger. She, unfazed, squeezed even more. "Zixuan!" A boy approached, Garnacho, the most popular in the class. She released my wrist immediately, leaving no trace. Garnacho smiled widely. "Shall we have a drink together?" She blinked, smiled coquettishly. "Sure!" Amidst the cheers, both drank several glasses. "What happened to your hand?" Garnacho asked. "I was bitten." "Do you need a rabies shot?" "No need." Her gaze brushed mine, ambiguous. "He isn't so crazy as to do that." The strong smell of alcohol mixed with cigarette smoke caused me great discomfort. I got up and left the room. Only upon feeling the cold air on my face did I begin to recover my composure. I wasn't wearing my coat, but I didn't want to go back. I stood there for a moment on the ground floor, observing in silence the coming and going of people on the street. Behind me, soft footsteps were heard. Xiao ran toward me, calling me in a low voice, "Alan, it's very cold outside, you forgot this." She held my coat, hesitated a moment, then blushed and, standing on tiptoe, placed it over my shoulders. It smelled like fresh grass, a very pleasant aroma. After helping me with the coat, she didn't leave immediately. She stayed there wavering for an instant and suddenly took a deep breath. "Alan, since the first day you arrived, I noticed you, but in that moment..." "President?" A cold voice interrupted suddenly. Zixuan was standing in the door against the light, her face unrecognizable in the shadow. "Someone is looking for you." Xiao froze for a second, then nodded awkwardly. "Yes, I'm coming." Upon turning, she almost slipped. After Xiao Xiao entered, Zixuan remained there without moving. I didn't want to pay her any attention, so I walked forward, but as we crossed, she raised her arm and stopped me. "What's wrong?" I asked coldly. She looked at me with a strange expression and suddenly said, "She likes you." It wasn't a question, it was an affirmation. My heart accelerated. But I didn't respond. Zixuan continued, "You love her too, and what does that have to do with you?" I pushed her hand away and opened the door to leave. Just then, her voice loaded with darkness sounded behind me. "Brother, whenever she calls me that, it can't be anything good." And indeed, in the next second, she smiled slightly. Guess what would happen if Mom found out? I clenched my fist tightly. She knew perfectly how to infuriate me. Not long ago at dinner, my mother had lectured me about the dangers of love at an early age. "Do you think you scare me?" She looked at me with a strange smile in her eyes, raised her hand, and waved the band-aid she had on her finger. Then she suddenly changed the subject. "You bit me so hard that it broke." Your tone was very weird, almost as if she were pampering herself. "You have to take responsibility." I pushed her away. "Are you sick or what?" I turned to leave, but I heard her soft laughter behind me. That night, upon returning home, my parents had already returned. Zixuan put the mask back on, continuing her role in the theater of the happy family. But when they weren't looking, she lowered her voice and asked me, "What is so special about her?" I stayed stunned an instant, and then understood she was talking about Xiao Xiao. I let out a cold laugh and responded intentionally with a provocative tone. 1,000 times better than you." Under the cold white light, she narrowed her eyes with an ambiguous smile on her lips. "Really?" Her gaze seemed to want to pierce through me. Then she smiled softly with a voice loaded with ambiguity. "But brother, you and I are the same type, right?" I always believed I hid it well. Not even my mother knew. How could anyone else notice? But with a single sentence, Zixuan dragged me back to the memories I most wanted to bury. School bullying was never something foreign to me. Only back then, I wasn't the victim. I was the indifferent spectator. Even sometimes I contributed to making everything worse. Before changing schools, there was a girl named Meng Yao who liked me. She came from a powerful family, had her own group in school, and used to solve everything with violence. In my class, there was a classmate who detested me. She always tried to isolate me and turn others against me. I told Meng Yao about it. From then on, that girl didn't have a single day of peace. At first, I felt satisfaction, but when I saw her with her face full of wounds and reddened eyes asking me between sobs, "Will I have to die for you to leave me alone?" It was then when I woke up. But before I could stop it, she had already changed schools. Since I arrived here, every time someone bothered me, I didn't feel rage, but remorse. I thought maybe this is my punishment. As long as I endured, heaven might forgive me. As long as I didn't mention it, nobody would know about my past. But Zixuan knew. I don't know how, but she detected the smell of someone like her. On that frozen night, she looked down at me and smiled softly, saying, "You and I are the same type." I didn't deny it. My nightmares were perhaps about to start again, but against all odds, Zixuan did nothing. Everything remained the same. She kept going and returning from school with me, perfectly performing the role of the ideal younger sister. Because of our closeness, rumors started to circulate in the school. Some said we were a pair of premature lovers. That bothered me deeply. Every day after class, I stayed longer at school, using the excuse of group assignments with Xiao Xiao. My mother started to notice something strange. "Why are you getting home so late lately?" I responded with sincerity. "I'm doing work with a classmate." My mother stopped suddenly and looked at me fixedly. "Classmate? Man or woman?" I hesitated a second, then responded, "Man." Clearly, she didn't believe me. "Can't you ask Zixuan at home? Your father says she always takes first place in the exams." I responded coldly and turned to enter my room. Scarcely did I turn the corner of the hallway when I saw Zixuan standing right behind the wall. Clearly, she had heard the whole conversation between my mother and me. "Brother, Aunt is right. If you have any problem, you can ask me." She looked at me with mockery in her eyes. I ignored her and went straight into my room. But sometimes, the more you fear something, the more likely it is to happen. After the mid-semester exams, my results were a disaster. My mother held the grade report, her voice full of disappointment. "Look at Zixuan, once again in first place in the whole class. With such a good teacher by your side, can't you learn something?" I let out a cold laugh. Even if I want to learn, it doesn't mean she wants to teach me. Zixuan appeared out of nowhere, tilted her head and smiled sweetly. How could I not want to, brother? To reassure Mom, I had no choice but to pretend I was studying with Zixuan. As soon as the study door closed, I warned her coldly. I only want to study, don't bother me. She blinked with an innocent expression. Am I not helping you study? I looked at her with distrust. She burst out laughing while opening the book. If you get bad grades again, Aunt will be very sad. She always knew how to touch my weak point. From where I was, I could clearly see her long, curled eyelashes, the small and delicate nose, and the ears reddened by the heat. Suddenly, I understood why everyone adored her. She had been born with an almost royal beauty. Even if inside she was cruel and fake, with just that appearance, it was enough to deceive the entire world. Have you looked enough? I don't know since when, but Zixuan was already looking at me with an ambiguous smile. She had very beautiful almond eyes. Her pupils were clear, and when she narrowed her eyes, even if she looked at a dog, it seemed like she looked at someone she loved. Since she discovered me, I didn't even bother to pretend. Bright on the outside, rotten on the inside. The more I look, the more disgust it gives me. She shrugged with tranquility, without taking it to heart. Suddenly she asked, Then who do you think is the same inside and out? Cao Xiao? I didn't understand why she mentioned her. Why are you talking about her? Zixuan wiped away the smile, got up, and with an indifferent tone said, I just think that perhaps she cannot teach you as well as I can. Although Xiao Xiao was the class representative, her grades had never been especially good. What Zixuan said was clearly to belittle her. And what? Does being good at studies make you superior? I mocked with a cold smile. She narrowed her eyes, smiling mischievously. No, but being good at studies gives me more opportunities to be alone with you. The heating is really very hot. Suddenly I started to feel heat, even more so when she approached all of a sudden. She stopped just a few centimeters from me with an insinuating smile on her lips. It doesn't matter if I'm bad on the inside, as long as I'm pretty on the outside. I knew perfectly well how twisted she was, but hearing that phrase, my heart gave a jump. Get away from me! Barely had I pronounced the words when I surprised myself. Not so long ago, the one saying that was her. After several study sessions together, as much as I hated Zixuan, I had to admit it, she was an excellent tutor. Every doubt I had, she explained with impeccable clarity. One night while studying in the office, I didn't know at what moment I had fallen asleep. Upon waking up, I discovered that someone had covered my body with a jacket. Zixuan was sitting next to me browsing a book. The sound of the paper turning was the only thing that broke the silence of the room. Without moving, I tried to control my breathing. The jacket had a familiar aroma with a slight youthful perfume. In that moment, I realized something. The rejection I felt for her had diminished a bit, but only a bit. After avoiding study meetings with Xiao Xiao several times, she looked for me. Alon, you've been very busy lately? We don't have time to review together anymore. I didn't know what to respond. He's busy reviewing with me, intervened Zixuan, appearing out of nowhere. Xiao Xiao scratched her head and smiled. It makes sense, you live nearby. Surely it's more comfortable that way. She didn't realize how strange the atmosphere was. She thought a bit and continued. This weekend I'm organizing a camping trip in the mountains with the whole class as relaxation after the exam. Would you like to come? Truly, I had no intention of going. But just then, Zixuan threw me a look and then responded, If he doesn't go, I will. Xiao Xiao was surprised, but immediately smiled with enthusiasm. Great! See you Saturday at the school entrance. After Xiao Xiao left, Zixuan looked at me with a suggestive expression. I didn't expect that you also wanted to go. I didn't want to be left behind. There are many things you don't see. She tilted her head, smiling. Ah, yes. I turned around to leave, but in that moment, I heard her voice again, soft but clear. Then I'm going too. And so, two people who didn't plan to participate ended up signing up. The day of the camp, I went very well prepared. Since I was little, I had experience camping, so it wasn't something new for me. We met at the school gate and took a bus to the base of the mountain. According to Xiao Xiao's plan, we had to go up on foot to a clearing at the summit before the sun set and set up the tents there. But with the presence of Zixuan, an excursion that should have been quiet became much more animated. During the whole way, Garnacho didn't detach from her, chatting and laughing without stopping. I lowered my head and walked ahead, hearing the cheerful voices behind me. Xiao quickened her pace until reaching my side. Alan, shall we set up the tent together? I responded without much spirit. She hesitated a bit, then asked in a low voice, Oh, are we sharing the same tent? I raised my gaze toward her. Xiao Xiao's face was slightly flushed. Garnacho's voice sounded at my back. Zixuan, shall we put our tents one next to the other? Then, a feeling difficult to describe invaded me inside. No, I responded before Zixuan. When I realized it, I had already reacted in an exaggerated way. She hadn't even answered yet. Just in that moment, I noticed that I had lost my amulet. It was a birthday gift from my mother, and I always carried it with me. Xiao Xiao got worried immediately. Let me help you look for it. I shook my head. You have to guide the group. I can look for it alone. She hesitated a bit. Are you sure you'll be okay alone? I'm going with him, said Zixuan, advancing slowly toward me under Garnacho's surprised gaze. Sincerely, I didn't want her help in the least, but Xiao Xiao went ahead, accepting quickly in my place. Perfect! That way you can go together. We'll wait for you at the summit. And that was how I ended up having an unexpected companion in my search for the amulet. I assumed I had lost it near the place where we got off the bus. In that moment, I had heard a slight metallic sound, but I didn't give it importance. Thinking about it now, maybe it was when it fell. I walked with a quick step. Zixuan followed me at a certain distance, neither too close nor too far, as if she weren't even really helping. I had already camped before on this mountain, so I knew a shortcut to go down. I deviated on purpose by that path, with the intention of losing her, but she was still there behind. I accelerated my pace. After several curves, I finally stopped seeing her. While I smiled with satisfaction, suddenly the ground disappeared under my feet, and I rolled downhill until falling inside a deep hole. I sat up as best I could, covered in dirt. I looked up. The edge was very high. I couldn't get out on my own. What bad luck! Without further option, I shouted, Zixuan! Nobody responded. I shouted louder, Zixuan! Footsteps were heard above. A second later, her face appeared peeking over the edge of the hole. She narrowed her eyes and asked with indifference, Were you calling me? Go get help now! But she didn't move. Instead, she crouched down and looked at me with a smile. Ask me, please. I grit my teeth with rage. Get lost. Zixuan let out a giggle, got up, and left. Truly! Silence returned to the place, and uneasiness began to grow in my interior. When I was wondering if I could really die of hunger down here. A noise was heard again above. Zixuan had returned. Crossing her arms, she tilted her head and looked at me. Do you want me to save you? I threw her a murderous look. She smiled with disdain. Call me Big Sister. I stayed perplexed. What kind of sick hobby is that? I won't do it. She raised an eyebrow, returning with her usual little game. Then I'm leaving. But this time, upon getting up, I don't know if by slipping or losing balance, she also fell inside the hole right next to me. I stayed frozen a second, and then let out a burst of laughter. Well deserved. Zixuan's face darkened for 2 seconds, then she looked at me, raising her gaze. I thought she would get angry, but no, she also burst out laughing. Yes, it was funny. We sat each in a corner without saying anything else. A while later, I asked, And now, how do we get out of here? She raised her gaze, looking around. We wait for someone to come rescue us. But this place is so remote. Clearly, nobody would come soon. Quote, Then we could die here? Zixuan smiled suddenly. Wouldn't it be pretty? She looked at me from the side with a deep expression, as if we died together for love. I knew she said it as a joke, but seeing those almond eyes, I couldn't avoid my face getting hot with rage. Who wants to die with you? Don't worry, I couldn't let you die, I frowned. How many naive boys have already fallen for that tone of yours? She smiled softly. Not many, you were the first. I looked away immediately. You go up first, I'll push you from below. I didn't expect her to propose that. After weighing the risks, I decided to accept. Her strength was not much, but it was enough so that I could grab the edge and climb up, perhaps because I used too much force. As soon as I got out, Zixuan fell on her back to the ground. She looked at me with a complicated expression. You won't leave me here, right? I frowned. I'm not like you. She smiled suddenly. I'll be waiting for you. Sometimes one has to trust in destiny. For example, the forecast said it would be sunny, but while I was going to look for help, it began to rain. In my mind, her image saying, "You won't leave me here, right?" kept repeating, "Of course not!" Luckily, on the way, I ran into some classmates who were returning. After explaining what happened, we all returned together to rescue her. The rain fell with more force. The path became slippery from the stones and the mud. A bad hunch invaded me. When we arrived, I froze. Half of the edge of the hole had collapsed. I ran like crazy and looking down. Zixuan was at the bottom, soaked, half buried under the dirt. I shouted, "Zixuan!" She moved a bit, opening her eyes slowly. Despite the rain, I could clearly read the movement of her lips. It hurts. Since I met her, she was always active. How could she be so vulnerable now? The collapse had formed a slope on one side of the hole. I jumped to rescue her. It was then when I noticed blood. It came down from her forehead, mixing with the rain and dripping down her chin. I clenched my fists. My voice was trembling. "I won't leave you here." "But you arrived late." "I'm sorry," when the ambulance arrived. I climbed in without hesitation. The paramedics looked at me weirdly. "I'm her brother," I lied. After examining her, they discovered that the most serious wound was in the head. Apparently, a stone fell on her during the collapse, causing her a concussion. That night, while her parents went out to buy food, I stayed sitting next to her bed in silence, observing her sleep. Due to the stitches, they had shaved part of her hair. Now she had her head bandaged, looking both ridiculous and sad. But I couldn't laugh. I touched her fingers, cold as ice, softly. I whispered, "I'm sorry." In the silent hospital room, only the constant beep of the monitor is heard. Zixuan would have to stay under observation for some more days. These days, as soon as classes ended, I ran directly to the hospital. After the blow to the head, Zixuan seemed to have become quieter. When I arrived, she didn't say anything, nor did she look at me. She pretended not to see me. I didn't expect her to talk either. I only took it as if I were helping her father take care of her for a while. Thus, I sat in the room doing my homework in silence. The third day I went, there was an unknown woman in the room. I stayed standing in the door, listening to how she spoke to Zixuan with a very soft voice, but in the next second, Zixuan abruptly ripped the IV needle from her arm, grabbed a glass from the table, and threw it violently to the floor. Crash! I ran inside immediately. In that same moment, Zixuan's father also arrived hurried. He pulled the woman to get her out of the room. But suddenly, she started shouting like crazy, very different from her kind tone from before. It was then when I saw her face clearly, a deformed face, fierce, but incredibly similar to Zixuan's. After her father managed to get her out, I noticed the back of Zixuan's hand. From the wrist to the tips of her fingers, the blood was running without stopping. I took her wrist with care and spoke to her in a low voice. "Can you lie back down?" She obeyed without resistance. I called the nurse to attend the wound and replace the IV. During the whole process, she didn't say a word, quiet until the unexpected. "Does it hurt in any other part?" I asked. She looked at the ceiling without responding. On the floor, there were still pieces of broken glass. I turned to start cleaning them, when suddenly her voice sounded again. "This wound hurts as much as when she threw the bottle at me." My heart gave a tumble. I looked at her. Below the area where they had shaved her hair, an old scar was noticeable, long and narrow. My voice trembled. "Did she do it on purpose?" Zixuan lowered her gaze slightly. "Yes, she was drunk, and she hit me with the bottle." I didn't know what to say, or rather, I didn't know how to comfort a girl who had been mistreated by her biological mother since she was small. Outside, without knowing when, the rain had started again. Lately, the weather was always that strange. I got up with the intention of looking for her father, but just in that moment, Zixuan took me by the hand. I stayed motionless. "Don't go." For the first time, I saw that expression on her face. Her eyes reddened, fragile like a little girl. My steps stopped. I felt that something soft in my interior had been touched. I squeezed her hand softly and whispered, "I'm not going to go." Her grip was loosening little by little. She turned her face toward the wall. The constant sound of the rain made the room feel even more silent. "Aylun?" she called me in a low voice. "Yes, I'm sorry." After leaving the hospital, Zixuan seemed to change. When there were no adults nearby, she no longer spoke to me with sarcasm, nor provoked me. She no longer called me little brother with that mocking tone. Instead, like any other person our age, she called me Aylun. At first, I thought she was repentant, but soon I realized it wasn't that. She had a way of possessing me that wasn't normal. She was always by my side, keeping me away from any other girl. It was enough for my gaze to get distracted a bit, and she managed to call my attention. That sensation of insecurity was growing, until reaching the point where, after receiving the Outstanding Student Award, she came down from the stage and put the certificate directly in my hands under the inquisitive gazes of the others. I could clearly feel how she was marking territory in an almost infantile and direct way. The time I got into the ambulance, Yarsho explained to our classmates that we were neighbors. That's why nobody knew the true relationship between Zixuan and me. Insecurity began to consume my mind. I felt I had to do something. I went to look for Xiao Xiao. "Can you help me with something?" She looked at me confused. "Can you pretend to be my girlfriend?" Her face flushed, but seeing the expression of hope in my eyes, she didn't ask anything, and nodded. Thanks to my intention of making it public, the rumors about me and Zixuan began to disappear, and in their place, gossip emerged about my relationship with Xiao Xiao. Since when are they together? Xiao Xiao has been in love with Alan for a long time, didn't you know? And Zixuan didn't like him too? Surely they were only rumors. In class, a group of girls murmured while looking at me. During those days, I started to avoid Zixuan. I did everything together with Xiao Xiao. She, for her part, stopped following me like before. She started arriving at school just in time, sometimes even late. Thanks to her excellent grades, the teachers overlooked it, but today, she ran into the head of discipline. Do you know how much class time has passed already? Because you take first place, you already think you're superior? The teacher stopped her at the door with a severe voice. Do you think you're so good? Do you think you'll take first again? Before, Zixuan surely would have responded with a smile, flattering the teacher to look good. But lately, she carried with her a cold air, or maybe she just didn't want to pretend anymore. It's possible, she responded with indifference. The teacher was left speechless and vented his frustration shouting at her, letting fall one last phrase before leaving furious. Much talent, but no values. He punished her to stay outside the classroom until the class finished. Zixuan entered the classroom as if dragging a gust of freezing wind. I couldn't avoid turning to look at her. She seemed to have noticed it. She raised her gaze with that same icy look from the first day we met, when she warned me not to touch her things. I turned my gaze back quickly. All that day, I was uneasy. I started to doubt if what I had done was the right thing. But in the end, I reaffirmed my decision. At most, she would receive a scolding, but if the relationship between Zixuan and me changed, that would be an irreversible disaster. I couldn't allow that to happen. Regarding the fake relationship with Xiao Xiao, Zixuan didn't say anything to my mother. Everything continued the same, except that she became colder with me. I was worried for several days, but little by little I felt more calm, and once again I confirmed that I had done the right thing. Zixuan kept her distance from me. Wasn't that what I had always desired? That night, Mom prepared a hearty dinner, and with enthusiasm served food on Zixuan's plate. Before, she would have smiled gratefully and eaten everything with politeness, but this time she only murmured something, ate a bit, and got up from the table. Lately, Zixuan seems to be in a bad mood, no? Perhaps it's because of the stress of studies. I thought about what occurred in the hospital when her biological mother went to see her. My stepfather and I tacitly understood that we should not mention that matter. Mom looked at me and said softly, "It seems you're still not pushing yourself hard enough." I nodded with reluctance. Mom is going to take the driving test. Push yourself with me, yes. At night, thinking about the change in Zixuan, it was clear that she had noticed that mine with Xiao Xiao was not simple friendship, but I didn't know exactly how much she had seen. Anyway, that cold attitude she had now was exactly what I wanted, and with that, it was enough for me. While I thought, suddenly I heard knocks on the door. In the silence of the night, that sound became even more sharp. I didn't move. They knocked again. Fearing waking my parents, I got up quickly and opened the door. Just as I imagined, it was Zixuan. She lowered her gaze to observe me, and under the moonlight, I could clearly see a smile on her lips, an unknown and unsettling smile. Instinctively, I took a step back, but she let out a giggle and asked, "Are you in love, little brother?" I opened my mouth, disposed to respond, but suddenly she took a step forward and cornered me against the wall. "Alan, with one isn't enough for you, right?" I felt a shiver down my back, but in front of me was the heat that her body radiated. Her voice, contained between teeth, sounded centimeters from my face. In the pale light of the moon, red streaks were noticeable in her eyes. I tried to resist, but I feared making noise and waking my parents. She didn't let go of my arm. On the contrary, she approached even more. Her breath was closer and closer. I had nowhere to escape. A sensation of indescribable humiliation invaded me when the tip of her nose almost brushed mine. I turned my face to avoid her and said with a trembling voice, "Zixuan, I'm your brother." Her body tensed. I don't know how much time passed before she let me go. She took some steps back with a certain disappointment, let out a bitter laugh, and left. The room filled with silence again. I let myself fall slowly to the floor. If I truly detested Zixuan, I could have rejected her, pushed her, as I had already done in the past. Then, why had I resorted to Xiao Xiao to pretend to be my girlfriend? Why, when she approached, did I have to tell her, "I'm your brother"? In the darkness, it seemed that only the beats of my heart responded, one after another, firm and constant. 2 weeks after having started going out with Xiao Xiao, I proposed to end it. "This is very unfair for you," I told her with seriousness. "It was an impulsive decision, sorry." Xiao Xiao waved her hands quickly. "You don't have to apologize." She wavered a bit and then scratched her head with shyness. "Truly, I also had my motives. After all, I wouldn't accept doing this if it weren't about you." She said that with so much frankness that I could only lower my head and pretend that I didn't understand. But nobody else knew that Xiao Xiao and I had broken up. Garnacho, knowing that Zixuan and I were neighbors, and that I had a girlfriend, eliminated me from his list of love rivals, and he began to speak with me frequently. At first we only conversed in class, but then he also invited me to go out. Although he was handsome, his personality was surprisingly accessible. Both his liking and his hatred he left clear and public. This time, the reason why Garnacho invited me to go out was because Li Cheng would also be present. For a long time, I haven't been able to stand him, but he fears me deeply. Garnacho asked me to go to take away a bit of his confidence. Li Cheng was the one who used to harass me in the past. "You only have to go for a bit," Garnacho told me. "It will take only a few minutes, enough so that the one Zixuan likes believes we are only normal brothers." And I accepted. I don't know who organized that party, but it was a group of high school students wanting to imitate adults. Food, alcohol. Upon entering the room, the smell of cigarette smoke made me frown. Li Cheng had not arrived yet. Garnacho approached and whispered to me, "Wait a bit more, yes?" I didn't want to wait too long, but since I had already committed myself, I couldn't leave. In reality, I only needed to appear. I lost nothing. Even seeing Li Cheng in fear could be something satisfying. Thinking that, I sat for a while longer. Not long after, the door opened, and I heard Li Cheng's voice. Upon raising my gaze, I froze! A shiver ran through me from my feet to the back of my neck. Amidst the cigarette smoke, next to Li Tiang, was someone I never wanted to see again, Meng Yao. The fragments of memory that I had tried so hard to bury began to assemble into a complete image. I was once an accomplice of the abusers, and that past has no possible redemption. Amidst the bustle, Meng Yao looked at me with an ironic smile. "How good to see you again, Alan." I couldn't help but admit that knowing Meng Yao was Li Cheng's cousin, I understood immediately from where he had learned his ways of harassment. The blood they shared made them prone to those behaviors. Probably upon finding out that Garnacho would bring me, Li Cheng invited Meng Yao, a person of power and feared by many, to give himself courage. But Li Cheng didn't know that Meng Yao and I already knew each other, and we hadn't ended well. When we moved away, we argued. I asked her why she always used violence. She, with coldness, responded, "My mother got you justice. Why do you blame me?" "Then why did you go so far?" I asked her. Meng Yao looked at me with icy eyes. "Alan, in the end, you and I are the same. We are sinners, and all sinners go to hell." That phrase haunted me for a long time. I wanted to forget it, but I couldn't, until when I became Li Cheng's victim, I stopped hating him. In its place, I felt a kind of relief. At least this time, I wasn't the one who led someone to hell. At the party, I didn't do what Garnacho expected. I didn't confront or intimidate Li Cheng. On the contrary, with Meng Yao's presence, I left early. I left the place and began to run, but Meng Yao and her companions intercepted me. The roar of a motorcycle was heard. I had no choice but to stop. "What's wrong?" I asked, on guard. Meng Yao took off her helmet and, with a gesture of her head, indicated for me to follow her to a nearby alley. "Come, we have to talk." I didn't move. Before I changed schools, she had already taken me once to a dark alley. A group of people held me with force and acted with violence. Luckily, that time, I managed to escape. She smiled and extended her hand to touch my shoulder, but I moved away immediately. Surprised, she turned around, put out her cigarette and said, "You're still as stubborn as always." I backed away, looking for an escape route. She lunged toward me, blocking my vision. "Before I let you escape, let's see if this time you can do it again." I felt a deep disgust. "Get lost once and for all." She seemed to hear something amusing and let out a burst of laughter. "Are you throwing me out? Do you want to die or what?" While she spoke, she made a sign to her group to advance. Suddenly, a familiar silhouette appeared. Zixuan interposed herself between her and me. "Dare to touch him!" Meng Yao stayed stunned for some seconds, then shouted, "And who are you? Do you feel like dying?" Immediately after, she threw a punch direct at Zixuan. I shouted, but I only saw how Zixuan dodged with elegance and counterattacked immediately. A certain blow to Meng Yao's face made her start bleeding from her nose. Taking advantage of her being stunned, Zixuan immobilized her, circling her neck and taking her down to the ground. I, at her side, stayed open-mouthed. Zixuan put a knife to her neck and shouted to Meng Yao's group, "Get out right now or I'll kill her." For the first time, Meng Yao, the feared leader, was treated like that. She remained motionless, incapable of reacting. "Go now, fast." The others fled immediately. Finally, Zixuan let her go. Meng Yao began to insult me. "Damn bastard, with that little boy face you only bring problems." But before she finished, Zixuan grabbed her by the neck and hit her against the ground again. This time she was not only bleeding from her nose, but also from her forehead. "I give up, sister," she pleaded. "The blood is getting in my eyes. Please let me go." I was starting to get worried. Zixuan snorted and let her go. She didn't say anything else. She only knelt down, wiping away the tears. Zixuan threw me a look and turned around to leave. I ran after her. "What are you doing here?" "It was only a coincidence." She responded, but I didn't believe her. Maybe upon leaving classes, since I left with Garnacho, she followed. I kept walking at her side. "You fight very well." "I practiced jujitsu since I was little," she responded without much emotion. "Truly, can you teach me?" "Do you feel like dying?" "Only a little, nothing more." "You are a nuisance." That night, the path home seemed longer than normal, but I kept walking behind her, seeing how our shadows lengthened under the streetlight, feeling an interior peace like never before. After that night, a strange complicity was born between Zixuan and me. Every time we left classes, no matter who left first, we always ended up walking home together. That silent company became, for a long time, the bond that united us. Zixuan, little by little, returned to smiling, and again became the girl who always went up to the podium to receive awards. She was a girl who shone intensely, although I knew it was only a mask of hers. But the strange thing is that I felt that was her true essence. She helped me study, remembered my birthday, took me for walks, and bought me strange things. My mother also used to say, "Who would have said it? These two children get along so well." I thought we had a very good relationship, perhaps like that of true siblings. If life had continued quietly like that, perhaps we would have been like those siblings who together enter the university of their dreams, graduate, and grow one beside the other. But then an unexpected change occurred that altered everything. On my mother's wedding anniversary, she had finally gotten the driver's license she had dreamed of so much. To surprise my stepfather, she planned a car trip on her own. That same day, she went out in secret to practice. It was a Friday afternoon. I was in class listening to a boring physics lesson when the lead teacher entered and called me to leave the classroom. A bad presentiment invaded me with force. "Alan, I need to talk to you. You have to stay calm," the teacher told me with a look full of pain and impotence. "Your mother had a traffic accident. Now she is in the hospital." I felt as if my head exploded. Later, I found out that the teacher was trying to soften the news. My mother had been run over by a truck. The car was completely destroyed, and she died on the spot. But in that moment, I still thought she was still in intensive care. I believed she was going to be okay. So when I arrived at the hospital and saw her cold body, I almost fainted. I had nothing left. Even my mother, the person I most loved, had disappeared. I don't remember how those days passed. I only remember that the sun rose and set time and again. I almost didn't sleep at night, and when I finally managed to sleep, I dreamed of my mother asking me if I was studying well, if I was living well. I nodded desperately with my head, begging for her to return, but upon waking up, only the marks of cold tears remained on the pillow, nothing more. I didn't want to go out, much less return to school. It was then when my biological father came to look for me and proposed I move with him to another city. Zixuan's father asked me what I thought. I didn't look at Zixuan, I only nodded with my head. Although my father already had another family, living with him seemed more reasonable than with my stepfather. The day I left, Zixuan gave me a small box. I opened it and saw that it was the amulet that my mother had given me. I had lost it during a camping trip. How could it be here? I looked at her and she told me, "I made it again from memory. I don't know if it looks like the one you had." I looked at the amulet and suddenly smiled with tears falling down my cheeks. "Yes, it looks a lot like it," I responded. My father had already managed my school transfer. I went home to prepare my things. That day it was raining intensely. It wasn't long after returning home when I realized that the amulet that Zixuan had given me had also disappeared. I looked at my empty wrist and a sensation of desperation enveloped me like an inevitable destiny. I ran out of the house like a madman, but with such strong rain, I didn't know where to go to look. I kept walking down the long street. The rain little by little calmed down and the clouds descended, leaving a thin mist. Suddenly I realized that it was impossible to find it. Like my mother, who had passed away, it would no longer return. I turned around, going back the same way, but on the path home, someone dragged me toward a long alley. I raised my head and encountered Meng Yao's distorted face. Her henchman pushed me with force to the ground. "Finally, I caught you, Alan. Today I want to see how you are going to escape." Barely had she finished talking when she raised her hand. A loud sound of tearing resonated. She had pulled my pants. A group of people surrounded me, taking photos. "Sister, this is already going too far." "Shut up!" Only then did I notice there was someone behind her. It was Li Cheng. "Don't you remember that he pushed you against the railing?" "I haven't forgotten it, but look at him now," snorted Meng Yao. "What are you complaining about if I'm helping you take revenge?" Li Cheng stayed in silence, not daring to say anything. Meng Yao became increasingly violent. They held me with force, and every time I tried to resist, a brutal slap fell on my face. Not much passed until my whole face was swollen. "Sister, his nose is bleeding," shouted Li Cheng. "Shut up, he's not going to die," shouted Meng Yao. Perhaps incapable of continuing to bear it, Li Cheng ran out. I looked at the gray sky and suddenly said, "Meng Yao, my mother died." She stopped for a second. "And what does that have to do with me?" I lowered my gaze but kept it fixed on her. "I'm sure she won't forgive you." The rain silently amplified all the fears. Meng Yao cursed something, then got up and suddenly hit me between the legs. The pain made me curl up, and while I saw her walking away, all the tension in my body seemed to vanish. I don't know how I managed to get home. The blood had already dried on my face, my body was covered in bruises and dirt, wrapped in a torn jacket. My steps dragged me home. When the door closed, the sound of the rain was also being muffled. A long time passed, then the door opened again. Zixuan was standing there, looking at me with a lost gaze. She approached step by step with an expression that little by little was transforming into uncontrolled fury. "It has to have been her, right?" Her voice trembled. She almost shouted the question. "Was it her?" Zixuan looked at me, eyes red with rage and tears. Suddenly, she threw her backpack to the floor, turned around, and ran toward the kitchen. She returned with a knife in hand and went out the door. I ran after her and hugged her with force from behind. "I'm fine," I whispered to her, trying to calm her. I heard her muffled sobs and then a clack. The knife fell to the floor. She turned and hugged me with force. I sank my face into her chest, breathing that so pleasant aroma. The tears didn't stop falling. "I'm sorry!" She didn't stop repeating it. I raised my head, put my index finger on her lips, and shook my head. Zixuan looked at me astonished, like a lost girl. I removed my hand and with softness and devotion I gave her a kiss on her beautiful lips. I think I will remember it forever. On that gray and rainy day, I gave my first kiss to a girl who cried and asked me for forgiveness. No matter how this story started, I chose to forgive in the end. Our relationship was not always pretty, there were moments of anger, but after so many falls, we are still standing and together. I cannot deny a truth. In the deepest part of my heart, I kept a secret. I think I fell in love with Zixuan. Life is not like in the stories. It is not enough to know what you feel to stay with whom you love. After preparing my luggage, my father came to look for me. I left this city. I moved away from the people and the things that I once loved or hated. At first, I tried to contact Zixuan, but neither messages nor emails had a response. Then, by chance, I managed to contact Garnacho. He explained to me that Zixuan had changed schools, that they didn't know where she had gone, and that nobody had been able to communicate with her again. Not even those who most loved her knew anything. Perhaps it was she herself who decided to break all contact. Little by little, I also stopped trying. Only sometimes in the middle of the night, I thought about that girl who protected me against everything. I don't know if she still remembers that farewell kiss, and if she remembers it, why did she never look for me afterward? In my biological father's house, my life was not easy. My stepmother had a son, and for years I felt like a stranger. Luckily, after the entrance exam, I entered a distant university, and after graduating, I worked in another place. Family stopped being something important for me. 8 years passed until I returned to this city. Garnacho was getting married and insisted that I be his best man. Curiously, we had maintained contact all those years. Those who were almost unknown today were friends. I accepted to attend. After landing, I felt a strange familiarity upon returning. I went straight to the hotel that Garnacho had reserved. He was marrying a wealthy woman and everything was well organized for the guests. That night, he organized a welcome party for the former classmates. To my surprise, Li Chang also came. Garnacho explained to me in a low voice. It couldn't be avoided. Now we are colleagues. Not inviting him would be awkward. Destiny always has strange and disconcerting turns. After so many years, when Li Chang saw me, his first reaction was of fear. I nodded to him with my head, and in an isolated corner I smiled slightly. If someone had seen us, they would think that I was the abuser. Adults are experts in pretending. Nobody mentioned what happened years ago. After drinking a bit too much, someone again mentioned Zixuan. "Does anyone know where she went?" asked Garnacho. Everyone shook their heads. Only Li Chang's face changed expression. Garnacho asked again, "Alan, didn't Xiao Xiao say that you and Zixuan were neighbors?" "Ah, and why didn't Xiao Xiao come with you?" The question arose because now Xiao Xiao and I were in a relationship. We met again by chance 2 years ago. She was the one who looked for me. In the right moment, being the suitable person, I accepted, and we were together for more than a year. But when the dopamine faded, problems began to arise in our relationship. Everything really exploded when her mother appeared. Zhao Qiao began to have opinions contrary to mine, and she always leaned toward her mother's side. As a daughter, she wasn't bad, but as a partner, she wasn't good enough. Before coming here, we argued for that reason. She frowned and told me, "Alan, I only have one heart, but there are many people in this world whom I must love. Can you stop making everything more difficult?" In that moment, I felt cold in my heart and suddenly remembered many years ago when we met, for the first time in a karaoke room, with the smell of alcohol. I was wearing a light black shirt, and she was talking to me shyly. That girl who smelled like fresh grass no longer existed. In her place was an adult woman who calculated every feeling in detail. In that instant, I felt as if they squeezed my wrist. Then someone sitting by my side smiled and told me, "Brother, today you look very handsome." That girl would always save me in moments of danger, would protect me from the bad ones, and would completely lose control if she saw me hurt. During all these years, I thought I had forgotten her, but now I realize that I haven't been able to do it. To Xiao Xiao, I wanted to say, if you have ever been loved 100% by someone, you will know that that kind of love doesn't allow half measures. She kept silent a moment and then responded, "Who has loved you 100%? I lowered my head without responding. "That person, I don't know where she is now, but in my memory she will always be an honest and passionate girl." Finally, I looked at Xiao Xiao and told her, "Goodbye?" Before Garnacho's question, I simply smiled. "She's busy." Then everyone continued conversing, and Xiao Xiao's name was again lost among the voices, as it had already been forgotten years ago. Preparing a wedding is something complex. Garnacho was so busy that he didn't have time even to fix his broken car. He gave me the keys and asked me, "Help me find a workshop to repair it." I couldn't refuse, so I agreed to help him. I looked for a well-rated workshop and drove there. After explaining the problem, they began to check it. I sat outside the entrance, checking the phone while I waited. A woman passed in front of me, and I felt a strange but strong sensation. Unconsciously, I raised my gaze. In this sector, women are rarely seen. She was wearing a mechanical technician's uniform with a cap and mask. She was checking the engine of my car while she talked with a companion. I got up all of a sudden and ran toward her. She raised her head and looked at me. Although only her eyes were seen, despite all these years, I recognized her immediately. "Zixuan," I said with a trembling voice. She stopped an instant. Her gaze seemed not to recognize me. She slightly frowned. "Who are you?" I took off the mask. "I'm Elan." She again crouched down to check the engine and only responded softly. "Ah." I tried to control the trembling of my body. I didn't understand why she pretended not to recognize me, nor why, having always been the best of the class and capable of entering a prestigious university even after changing schools, now she worked repairing cars here. I asked her in a low voice, "Why are you here?" She responded quickly, "And why not?" I was left without words for a moment. "Can we talk? I want to know what has happened all these years, where you went, why nobody knew anything about you." "I'm working," she rejected me with coldness. I contained the bitterness in my eyes and backed away in silence toward the door. "It's okay, then I'll wait for you when you finish." At sunset, she finally finished her shift. Probably she thought that I had already left. She went out the door, stood under a tree, and lit a cigarette. When the flame shone, she raised her head and saw me. She stayed a bit surprised. I approached, took a cigarette from her pack, and raised it in front of her. "Give me fire?" She didn't move, frowned, and said, "Smoking is not good." I smiled, exhaled the smoke, and raised my head. I lit the cigarette with the flame of her fingers, a smooth motion. Perfect. She frowned more. I let out a puff of smoke and, as if nothing, asked her, "Where were you all these years?" She put out her cigarette, raised her chin with pride, and her mouth curved into a dry smile. For an instant I saw the Zixuan of before. She passed by my side and with coldness said, "There is nothing to talk about." During the following days, I kept going to the workshop. I wanted to know what had happened with Zixuan all those years, but the only thing she said was, "Your car is ready," and she didn't talk more. One day I again waited for her until late. Zixuan changed clothes, put on the cap and the coat, and left without even looking at me. I ran after her. I felt as if time had been inverted. In the past, she always followed me, and I tried to distance myself. Now it was I who pursued her, but soon I lost her. I stayed standing by the street among the crowd, and suddenly something occurred to me. I ran like crazy toward a familiar place, the place where my mother and I had lived for a year. When I arrived, Zixuan was just opening the door. After this re-encounter, she finally let a different expression be seen under her coldness. I stepped inside before she could react. She didn't move, only stayed looking at me. After a long while, she finally sketched a slight smile. "You believe it? And if I call the police right now?" I took a step back. "This is also my house." Suddenly, she closed the door with force, pushed me against the wall behind me. The corners of her eyes reddened, breathing softly. After 8 years, I finally saw her face clearly again. She had grown a bit, her beautiful face had become much more mature. The soft aroma of before had disappeared, replaced by a slight smell of tobacco. The heat of her body reminded me that we both were already adults. "Can I kiss you?" She stayed surprised. Before she could react, I had already kissed her with force. Years ago, on a rainy day, I kissed her for the first time right here. That time, she stayed rigid without moving. But this time, she returned the kiss full of emotion and passion. The air became lighter. Our bodies approached with more intimacy. I held her waist and led her toward the sofa. She sat on my legs, and I raised my head to look at her. My fingers slid through her hair, and I touched that scar. As if I had activated a switch, little by little we stopped, with our foreheads together. I whispered, "Zixuan, where have you been all these years?" But Zixuan didn't want to tell me. That night she accompanied me back to the hotel and left me with a single phrase, "Don't look for me anymore." Of course I didn't pay her attention. After that I began to look for her more and more often, and I managed to integrate with her work companions. They didn't know the story between us. They thought that I had fallen in love with her at first sight and took turns to give me ideas and advice. Then I took the opportunity to ask about her past. They told me that Zixuan had been working there for almost a year. Apparently she was recommended by a friend of the owner. She was very smart, learned everything fast. Even we, the veteran mechanics, sometimes turned to her to exchange ideas. I showed myself surprised, but in reality I wasn't. She was always the best of the class during high school. How was she not going to be intelligent? But they didn't know what Zixuan had done before arriving there. She never talked about that on her own. During all that time, I kept appearing before her every day. Although she pretended not to pay me attention, I noticed that she did it intentionally. When I didn't look at her, she observed me in secret. When I became friends with her colleagues, she moved them away discreetly, assigning them more work. In reality, in all these years, she seemed not to have changed much. Everything she did was predictable, except the fact that she always kept silent about her past. That day, Garnacho invited us best men to try on the suits for the ceremony. I didn't look for Zixuan. While we tried on the clothes, Garnacho suddenly pointed to a groom suit. "That one would look incredible on you, try it on, go ahead." "I'm not going to try it on." "Come on. Don't you want to see how a suit fits you?" I stayed looking at the suit without saying anything. The saleswoman took the opportunity to insist, "If you like it, you can try it." And so they pushed me into the fitting room. The suit fit me surprisingly well. After dressing, Garnacho dragged me to the hair salon. While the stylist dried my hair, suddenly my phone rang. An unknown number appeared on the screen of my phone. Half asleep, I answered, "Hello?" It was Li Cheng's voice. "What's wrong?" There was a silence on the other side of the line. I frowned. "If there's nothing, I'm going to hang up." But Li Cheng continued. "In reality, that year, Zixuan found my cousin, beat her like crazy, and stabbed her several times. After that, Zixuan was sentenced to several years in prison. It's not a pretty story, that's why nobody tells it, not even my cousin." My mind stayed in blank upon hearing that. Garnacho was calling me, but I couldn't hear him. "With whom were you talking? Why are you so distracted?" Curious, he looked at the screen of my phone. The call already finished. I said, but I was still not reacting. Garnacho pulled me up all of a sudden. "Let's go, get out, there's a surprise." He dragged me to the flower hall of the bridal gown shop. A group of people looked at us with smiles. The large doors opened. Xiao Xiao appeared with a wedding dress, walking slowly toward me. She stood right in front of me. "Elan, that of the past was my fault. Now I want to love you with all my heart. If you don't have time to marry me, then I will be the one who comes to marry you." Among the laughter and applause of everyone, I finally returned to myself. A girl asked me for marriage with sincerity. It was a perfect proposal. But in my head, another image didn't stop turning. The scene repeated one and another time. 8 years ago, it ended on that rainy night in the hospital. A girl took my hand and said softly, "Don't go!" In the middle of the cheers, I escaped. Xiao Xiao never loved me completely. 8 years ago, she kept silence when they intimidated me. And 8 years later, she always obeyed her mother. With the groom's suit on, I ran through the crowd and got into a taxi. The driver looked at me with doubt. "Are you running from a wedding?" I closed my eyes and smiled. "I'm not running. I'm going to look for the woman I love." When I arrived, Zixuan had just lit a cigarette. She looked at me for an instant, her gaze turned vacant. The cigarette between her fingers had already been completely consumed. "You look good," she said, as if she had gathered all her strength to say it. Then she asked, "Are you going to get married?" "Yes." She, without losing the tenderness, returned to me the love letter that I wrote as a student. "Go." She smiled softly, trying to joke. "You didn't need to come only to show me that." "What are you afraid of?" I asked. She raised her gaze, her eyes seemed like a broken sky. She murmured, almost inaudible, "I'm afraid of ruining the wedding." I could only smile. Translated version of the final monologue. "Zixuan, I want to get married." I lowered my head to look at her, my voice trembling a bit. "Do you want to marry me?" She seemed not to understand. Her eyes opened slightly, and suddenly she hugged me with force. "But her voice broke. "I already know everything." I told her, "It doesn't matter now. You have me." I hugged her and whispered, "You're a fool. That person didn't deserve for you to do such terrible things for her." She hugged me even stronger. "For you, anything is worth the pain." I knelt slowly on one knee, looking at her in the eyes. "Zixuan, do you want to marry me?" Neither Zixuan nor I were perfect people. In a dark and stormy youth, destiny united us. We were separated for years, but those two imperfect beings managed to defeat conventions and prejudices to be together. On the day of our engagement, we went together to visit my mother. She rested in peace in the serene mountain. The sky was clear. The landscape looked like a painting. Zixuan made me again a talisman identical to the previous one. I put it on, and in front of my mother's tomb I smiled and said, "Mom, this time I won't lose it. You can be calm. I'm going to be happy." The black and white photograph of my mother smiled sweetly on the tombstone, as if she blessed us. A month later, in front of our loved ones and friends, Zixuan and I got married. Two souls that once fell into the mud of youth finally found peace in the arms of the other. I appreciate every second at her side because, once we lost each other, every moment now is precious. In the first year of marriage, we welcomed a new life. The first time I held that small and delicate body in my arms and saw the pure eyes of the baby, my heart filled with a love that I had never felt. I called our son Tiago. Every morning I wake up with a soft kiss from Zixuan. She always gets up before, prepares breakfast, and wakes me with tenderness. Everything she does is thinking of me. Every decision she takes from my perspective. I feel that she loves me with all her being. I am satisfied with my current life. Sometimes when our son sleeps, we sit together on the balcony, look at the stars, and share dreams and plans for the future. Zixuan always has the best advice. Her intelligence and strength are my greatest support. I know that this marriage is not only the union of two people, but the healing of two wounded souls. I value every second with Zixuan, because I know that no matter how difficult the path ahead is, while we are holding hands, there is nothing that we cannot overcome. Our love has passed the test of time, and now we only want to dedicate the rest of our lives to demonstrating that our love is eternal. In the years to come, I promise to love Zixuan with all my being. Never again will I lose the woman who loves me as if it were her life.